And this is Mr. Table Topics himself. Looking forward to having a great morning here at the Greensboro Public Library with Angel Guerrero and all the great people that are looking to find out how to take control. But it can be very important. There's a poem entitled, "For the Want of a Horseshoe Nail." For the want of the nail, the shoe was lost. For the want of the shoe, the horse was lost. For the want of the horse, the rider was lost. For the want of the rider, the battle was lost. For the want of the battle, the kingdom was lost. And all for the want of a horseshoe nail. And of course, I couldn't simply leave it at that. Why didn't they put a nail in the shoe and save the horse and the rider too, and win the battle and save the king? I guess it was just the same old thing, small details. And the thing that is important to understand is that there are some small details that we tend to ignore that can determine whether we win the battle or save the king. And in our society, we tend to ask two questions. What do you want and how do you want it? We tend to ask the what and the how. And I became highly successful in the computer graphics industry for 10 or 11 years, but I forgot to ask the primary question, who am I really? I had the what, I had the how, but my who was drying up on the vine. And so one day I woke up and I said, you know, I hate this job. It's not fulfilling who I am. There's got to be something else to do. And so between 1985 and 2001, I got downsized 5 times. And I can tell you, after the second time, you just do the drill. Update the resume, go down to employment security, file for your unemployment benefits, and then start looking for a job. But I reached the point where, that wasn't really working out well for me. After 5 times, it's like God does not want me to be employed. So I thought, well, I love helping people. Why don't I find a business where I can do that? And so I discovered coaching. And we'll talk a bit about that, but first I would like to give you a commercial, if you will indulge me. There's a small card on every table in front of you, and I'm going to make you an offer, and you can decide if you want to take me up on the offer or not. And by the time I get done with the presentation up here, you may decide, I just need to leave this guy alone, and that's fine. I'll still love you, it's cool. But if you would like to be added to my monthly e-letter list, I send a short monthly e-letter. Everybody that gets it says that they always get something good out of it. It's short. It's basically usually prints out on 1 page, so it doesn't take a lot of time to read. I've had managers tell me they use it with their team. Salespeople use it with their salespeople. If you'd like to have my e-letter, put down your email address on the card and your name. The second offer is that I'm going to cover a lot of stuff that can be a good bit of material to digest. And so the other thing that I offer is a free 30-minute coaching session by phone. And it's very easy to set that up. If you would like the coaching session, make a note on the card, put an FC for follow-up call and your phone number. And I'll give you a follow-up call sometime in the next week and see if we can connect and set up something on the calendar. And I'll be glad to talk with you about anything that we go through today or anything else that you would like to discuss in terms of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is still America, yes. There are several things that I think are important for us to understand. And these are the premises. Number 1, without you, nothing else is possible. That's why I like to focus in on, okay, just who are you? Not just what you want and how you want it, but who are you? After all, we're talking about your career and your life. We're talking about you today. Isn't it wonderful? We're actually talking about you today. Premise number 2, in your life you have requirements. Now, normally you're concerned about everybody else's requirements. What does the job require? What does the task require? What does the recipe require? Well, what do you require? We'll get into that shortly, but you do have requirements. It's about time we paid attention to some of those. Premise number 3, put on your own oxygen mask first. Where have you heard that? Why do you put on your own oxygen mask first? So that you can help other people. You have to be very selfish to become very, very generous. I went to a retreat center many years ago and I thought, boy, this is a great experience. You should really put more of this on your website. The facilitator said, you know, we'd like to do that, but we don't have anybody on staff that does web work, and so we have to pay for that. And if we paid for that, we wouldn't have the money to run the program. So they focused in on what their calling was. They focused in on what their mission group was called to do, which was to touch other people's lives, not fully develop the website. In your life, you've got people that pick off your resources. They take your time, they take your energy, they take your money, they borrow your tools and don't bring them back. Yeah. And somehow, when the time comes where you really need your resources to go get it and make it happen, they're all out on loan. You've got yourself committed to things that are not going to allow you to breathe the oxygen that you need to survive and thrive and continue with where you want to go. You already attract something. What is it that you're attracting? There are some of you who probably walk down the sidewalk and attract the piano falling on your heads. You know people, they're chronic problem zones. You know, I want for you to become a problem-free zone. I want you to attract better stuff, whatever that better stuff is. And sometimes you have to set better boundaries, and sometimes you have to raise your standards a bit higher. And that takes a bit of strategizing at times, and it takes a willingness to risk and at times to sacrifice. Premise number 5, to get there, we need to figure out where we are here. If you're sitting in Greensboro, North Carolina, and you want to go to Atlanta, but the only map you've got shows how to get from Dallas to Atlanta, how much good is that map going to be? It doesn't show you where you are here. So where are you in your life? When you start to build that bridge from where you are to where you want to be, sometimes you have to build it in multiple spans. How do you know where to build your bridge? Premise number 6, the what and the how follow the who. The what and the how follow the who. The usual questions that I've mentioned before, the what and the how, they come underneath that umbrella question of who are you. And finally, the conclusion, who you are determines everything else. Whether you're going to be happy, satisfied, or miserable with your outcome in life. And chances are, if you are not happy, then you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going, you don't attract the right things, you don't take care of yourself, and your requirements are not being met. How am I doing so far? Pretty good. Gosh, I was hoping to go better than that. Again, I've been there. It's just, gosh, you just want things to work for you, and sometimes you have to stand up and say, this is not working, what do I need to change, and how do I need to change it based upon who I am. The plan for today, learn and use some life planning tools to determine who you are. Requirements for your oxygen. What you want to attract, your vision of where you want to go, and how you want to attract. You know, how do you build the bridge to get there? What are your requirements? Now you have some worksheets there. The worksheet looks something like this, only it's in black and white in your notebooks. Does everybody have that? Okay, we're missing a couple.
Yeah, that was in our books.
It's in your books. There's a couple of people who need one. Would you mind passing those along, please? When we look at what you require, there's a list of things there that will spark your thinking about what it is you require. To be respected, to be heard. My wife has this requirement here. She has to be heard. And just between you and me, the 3 words that my wife thrives to hear are, "You're not fat." That's a requirement that she has. I gave this presentation a few weeks ago, and one fellow said, "You know, one thing on the list that's important to me is to make a difference." I should add that to the list. But when you look at your requirements and you're finding that those are not being met, what do? We'll get into that shortly, but for right now, it's helpful to know what your requirements are. You have a financial requirement. You also have some type of requirement for love and attention that you want for yourself. What other kind of requirements do you have that need to fill up who you are? Eliminate what you tolerate. We put up with a lot of stuff. What are you putting up with? Do you have somebody that calls you up and wastes your day for 20 minutes at a time? If you do the math, there are an average of 240 work days a year. 10 minutes a day adds up to 40 hours a year. Every 10 minutes on a work day that you waste adds up to a whole week. If you got somebody calling you for 20 minutes a day, and you can politely cut that down to 10 minutes a day, you have leveraged yourself a whole week by the end of the year in terms of a work day. Now think of that. What are you tolerating? What are you putting up with? Who's picking off your time, your energy, your resources? Again, tolerance is a range of what you put up with. I might be willing to put up with somebody chit-chatting with me for 15 minutes a day, but when they hit the 20-minute mark, they've stepped over the boundary. And so I have to politely say, I really need to get on with my day. How do you set that boundary? Well, again, there are ways to set those boundaries that are polite. There are ways to set those boundaries that are blunt. Again, people, things, situations, money, technology. I bet there's not a person sitting here in the room that has not had at least one bad experience with technology. I coached a guy a few years ago. He was on a sales team of 9 people. Whenever they would have a national meeting, he would fly in, and somehow his computer and his BlackBerry were the only ones that would not work. It was a huge toleration. Finally, he wound up sitting in the tech support office until they straightened it up. And don't you know, the next meeting it screwed up again. How do you deal with those things? How much time and energy do they waste for you? Is it worth throwing out the demons you know and overhauling to get the new ones in that you don't know, because basically you know the ones that you have are not really working for you? Again, those are decisions to make. How do you eliminate what you tolerate? Now, in your book, you should have a clean sweep program. And for those of you who have walked in, thank you, pass those on out. The Clean Sweep program is a 100-item checklist of stuff that you tolerate. Stuff that you put up with in 4 categories: physical environment, personal well-being, money, and relationships. The fellow that invented the Clean Sweep, it took him over a year to get 100 points on his own program. And then he started losing points because he raised his standards. As you raise your standards, you start losing points on the program because you start strategizing and implementing ways to improve your life. If you're looking for a way to start clean sweeping your life, this is one place to start. Make the first pass. Don't be embarrassed. Most of the people that I coach, their first pass, they usually get somewhere between 10 and 40 points. Every now and then you get somebody with 50 or 60. But we all have to start somewhere. We all have to look at those things that we put up with. We have to figure out how we're going to deal with that and what we're going to do to fix it. George, will you help me up here just for a minute?
Certainly.
You know, one of the things that can be really problematic is when you have to deal with a personal relationship. And let's say that you and I were working together. Let's say that I was your supervisor.
All right.
And let's just say that you've done an outstanding job. And may I get just a little personal with you?
Certainly.
I will not embarrass you too much. George, congratulations. You did a great job. You actually pulled together all the research on the project. You pulled the team together. You led the team. I just want to let you know that you did a great job, and I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. What did I do wrong? I congratulated you.
That's right.
I gave you this great pat on the head that should signify that you did a tremendous job. I don't pat just anybody on the head, you know.
That's true.
Were you okay with that?
Not particularly.
But I'm your supervisor. How do you tell me that you'd like me to change that behavior?
Good question.
Well, you don't have to answer it now, though. Thank you very much. You can go back where it's safer. Again, when somebody crosses a boundary, you have a choice to correct that. There are only two ways people learn how to treat you. Only two. One is what you teach them. The other is what they get by with. Now, I'm sure that if George and I were really working together, he would love to get the kudos, the acknowledgement that he did a great job. But that pat on the head thing, that was a bit of an overstep for most people. How would you go about telling your boss, I love it when you tell me I'm doing a great job, it's just I wish you wouldn't pat me on the head like that. Especially with all these people watching. How much risk would that be to tell your boss that? Would you feel comfortable doing that? Well, of course not. He thinks he's doing a great thing by supporting you. On the other hand, he has overstepped a bit. And if you're really uncomfortable with that, you have to let him know somehow that, yes, I like part A, part B, you could just turn that loose and we will have a great relationship together, thank you. Do you want to do that? How much risk will that take to tell somebody what your boundary is, what your standard is? Will it cost you your job? Or will it just be the next thing that the person says, oh, okay, I can do that? On one of the assessments, personality tests that I give, there's one page in one of the assessments that says, this is your ideal work environment. Ideal work environment. There's usually about a half a dozen bullet points on that page. And about 2 months ago, I was working with a fellow up in the northern part of the country. And he got to that page and he says, all of these things are true for me. And says, well, have you ever had a conversation with your boss that you'd like to have these things as part of your job? And he says, well, no. Well, don't you know, within a month, he had had a conference with his supervisor. He went over that information and said, I would like to have these things in my work environment because these are things that really motivate me. These are things that contribute to my ideal working area. And don't you know, she approved everything on his checklist. They were not necessarily huge things. They were not things that would take necessarily extra time and money. They were just things that meant something to him, and he had it listed in black and white so he could ask for it. He knew what to ask for because it was part of the truth of who he was. And in that case, the supervisor had no problem with saying, yeah, we can do that. So asking can be a big thing. Okay? Eliminating what you tolerate. Set a goal that you can control. to create your vision for there or here. Is there a place that you want to arrive? And or is here a place that you want to leave? Some people are motivated by what they're going to. Some people are motivated by what they're going from. You have to decide, what do you want to improve or create for your life? What step can you take towards it today? There's a funny little story about a woman who was on a very tight budget, but she wanted to create a reserve in her life of things that were important to her. And being on a budget, she couldn't get a second car, she couldn't get extra furniture, she couldn't get all the stuff that would allow her to have that sense of reserve, but she did go out and buy a whole case of toilet paper. She had a super reserve in this one area of her life. But it started her thinking differently. It takes between 6 and 18 months to retrain your brain, for those neuron connectors in there to reconnect. That's why if you decide to stop smoking, or you decide to go on a diet, somewhere around 6 months is that bump where it says, oh, I can have just one more cigarette, or hey, I can have that extra piece of cake with my dinner. And what that does is it revitalizes those patterns, those neural patterns in your brain that you've been working so hard to change. You need some accountability, and one of those things that we have here is accountability. You've got buddies in the room here that can hold you accountable to those changes, that can support you in making those changes stick, and maybe check in with you once a month, twice a month. Some type of support structure for you that holds you accountable to make the changes that you say are really important to you, that will make a difference in your life. Again, what step can you take towards making those changes today? What one small step can you take towards seizing control of your life and making something different that counts, so you start retraining your brain in that direction? Building your bridge. You know where you are today. You have an idea that you want to go that way. You may not know that you want to wind up there, but at least you know you want to start that way. How do you build your bridge that way? You notice something wrong with this bridge? Let's see, that would kind of come down here and that would kind of go over there, and somebody's made a real whopping boo-boo in this bridge. And they're out in the middle of the water there, and the bridge is kind of bypassing itself. Well, I would hate to be the architect and the builder that sits in on that lawsuit. But you need to build a bridge from where you are to where you want to go. Now for me, I had to build several spans. I knew that working in corporations and ad agencies doing computer graphics was not something that was feeding my soul. So I went from there after our department got eliminated. I went into freelancing thinking, I've got to figure this out. And then I wound up as a web development manager, which was at least 1 or 2 steps removed from having to do the graphics myself. And then after that job disappeared, DSL came in and web development went out. I wound up with a leadership development group here in town and did that for 2 years, and that was a step much closer to getting back to where I wanted to be, engaging with people. And I've started getting clear on what my requirements were. I have 5. I want to help people. I want to control my own schedule. I want to make a decent living. I want to be a really good daddy and hubby. And I want to do that all in the context of my faith in Christ. And the thing that I realized, if any of those requirements are not being met, my who is going to be a sad puppy. Again, I started building a bridge in a direction that would meet my requirements. What requirements do you have that you need to bridge over to so those requirements can be met, so that you feed your soul? I don't mean to preach. Build each span, and what's your plan? You are here. What's it going to take to get to there? Training, education, experience, networking, perhaps going into business for yourself. And then the new you goes there. Well, it took me 3 spans from the time I realized I hate this job to launching into the roller coaster of owning my own business and building a coaching practice. You may not know where all the spans are going to go to start with. You may build a span from this place to that place, and then have to go from that place yet again. But the thing that we understand, where you are today may not be exactly where you really want to be. If your soul is dying up on the vine there, something has to change. And now is the time to start thinking, what can I change? What really means something to me? Where do I need to go next? Networking your network so that your net works. I love this title. Because so many of us don't network our network so that our net works, and so our net does not work. And for those of you who don't have the handout, here's the one. It's a worksheet on the Networks program. And this is pretty straightforward. You got 3 areas to fill out. One I call the Inner Circle 6. Do you have about a half a dozen people that will be your private personal advisors? I remember a few months ago, there was a man I'd known for a while. We'd lost touch. And then 5 years later, we're back on each other's radar screen. We reconnected. He's had some incredible life experience, and I said to him, would you be on my personal advisory board? You know what he said? I would be honored. If somebody asked you to be part of their personal life advisory board, how would you feel about that? And if you asked somebody else to be part of your personal life advisory board, if they say no, well, you didn't really need that person anyway. But if they say yes, you've gained a counselor, someone who can offer you some guidance, someone who can hear you, someone who can make a difference in your life, because that's why you've brought them into your inner circle. What about your back office 12? Now, these are people that may be, in a church, a civic group, an association. Could be some folks in a referral group. Basically, these are folks that you can have sincere, meaningful conversation with. Meaningful dialogue, as a friend of mine used to say. And these are the folks that will not kid around with you unless everybody knows you're kidding. These are the folks that you can say, business has really been off by 50% this past couple of months. Are you seeing any kind of trend? It's not like you have to go up to this person and put on the happy face and make like everything is really good when they're about to cut off the electricity. You got that back office 12 folks that you build that relationship with, so that you've got a network of people that can feed into your goals and help you get there. And then finally, you've got your frontline 20. And at the bottom of the page, there's a whole list of related businesses, related categories. But your frontline 20 are people that you meet casually, that you have a friendship with, but you don't have that deep of a friendship with. And you have to remind them every now and then that, hey, you're out here somewhere and would like to be on their radar screen every now and then. But what this is to help you do is to line up and develop a network for yourself that is going to be effective for you. A personal network that will allow you to reach your goals and to teach these people. Again, they only learn how to treat you by what you teach them or what they get by with. Teach these people what it is that you want, what it is that you need. Ask them to help you, and then offer to help them in any way that you can. That builds the relationship. Again, the Networks program gets you on track to start looking for people who can help you. And there's one rule here. Without trust, a network doesn't work. There are two rules for being in a network, for engaging with someone else. And those rules are very simple. They both involve trust. You are not going to refer me to your best buddy unless you know that I will make you look good in the process. The second thing is similar to it. It's on the downside. You're not going to refer me to your best buddy until you know that I'm not going to mess up your relationship with your buddy. So one, I have to make you look good. Number two, I can't mess up your life in the process. And this is one of my favorite quotes. Fred Smith, who was a mentor to Zig Ziglar and a lot of other people that I could drop names of. Fred passed away a few years ago, but I was actually talking with him on the phone, and we were talking about asking for help. And he said that the person who cannot ask for help is poverty-stricken indeed. Poverty-stricken. What's getting in the way of asking for help? What's getting in the way of finding people who can help you, people that you have potential to help, and building that relationship with them? Sometimes all it takes is being able to ask in a polite way. Which brings me to this mouse. That carrot must weigh a ton to this little mouse. He really wants that carrot. Can you see him trying to stuff that into his little cheek pouch? Can you think of what he might do if he had 2 carrots? Whoa! Networking your network so your networks, you have to teach them what you want and how you want it. What do you teach them? You teach them your requirements, your vision, your goals, what opportunities you want to attract. And here's the question. If you really want the big carrot, why don't you ask for the big carrot? At least half the people I work with have trouble asking for what they really want. Did you want the radish? No. Did you want the broccoli? No. Do you really want Brussels sprouts? No, I want the carrot. Look at this carrot. I want that whole carrot. Angel, will you help me get this carrot? Alan, will you help me get the carrot?
Absolutely.
George, will you help me with this carrot?
Absolutely.
Would you like a carrot too?
No thank you.
All right. That worked pretty well. You know, we're clear on how to help each other.
Right.
What would you rather have besides a carrot?
Broccoli.
He's a broccoli guy. Okay, we got broccoli and carrots going up here. Any questions about how that works? What?
Can I get some ice cream?
Ice cream? Yeah, ice cream. What can you get from your network? Again, what do you want to ask for? Well, you know, like the little critters here, you're getting flowers from your network. You can get business, collaboration, customers. You can ask for employees if you run the business. Information, invitations, I mean, look at all the things that you have potential to ask for that you have not asked for yet. And who are you going to ask for? The people in your network that you haven't networked with yet. Don't be overwhelmed. Start today. Find a couple of people that you can invite into your network. Figure out what it is that you want to teach them. Teach them to bring you, teach them to do with you, teach them to do for you. Work that out. And how do you get those things? Are you just going to hope for it? Hope somebody gives you the carrot? Ask and don't hope. There's a fellow named Mark Gungor who does marriage seminars. And his program is called Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage. And I love this guy. And when he talks about the way that men work versus women, you really have to ask. And the way that women get things that they want from men, he's got several rules, but the first rule is ask. Second rule is ask more than once. The third rule is ask the right way. It's not like, when are you going to pick your underwear off the floor? That's not the right way to ask. The way to ask is, can we work something out so that we keep the room clean? With guys, you really have to ask and ask more than once. Women, that's a whole different subject, so I won't steal his thunder, but for the time being, don't just hope that others know what you want and how to please. Ask them. Don't just hint, 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 and hope, hope, hope that others get it. You have to ask them clearly for what you want. And people don't always think to tell you what they know. Is there anything else you think I need to know in going for this next job interview? You see the cat, you see the fish. What do you think is going through the cat's mind? I hope somebody will give me this fish. I hope this fish will just leap out of this bowl and into my mouth. That cat looks like he needs to ask for something. A lot of us cats look like we need to ask for something. Ask for the carrot. Ask for the broccoli. Ask for the ice cream. You know, what is it that you want? Start teaching your network to be on the lookout to bring that to you. Now here's what we have learned today. Without you, nothing else is possible. Know what you require to aspire. Eliminate what you tolerate. Set a goal that you control. Build a good bridge, span you can. Network your network. Ask for the carrot, don't just hope. And you've got some tools. The Clean Sweep program,